Appreciate you streaming in here on Birds 365 to Mac and Mac. We're lucky enough to get Kevin Kinkead, lead writer and editor of Crossing Broad, who every morning when I get up, Birds 365, I go to my Eagles websites, Bleeding Green Nation, Eagles Wire, Inside the Eagles. Oh, I got to go to Crossing Broad too, even though it isn't an Eagle-centric website, just in case Kinkead's got an opinion on the Philadelphia Eagles. He's here to share them with us for the next 15, 20, 25 minutes. KK, how'd your summer go? Been a minute since we had you on.
Yeah, no, it was good. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry if I sound or look haggard. Both of my kids are back at preschool now.
Uh-oh.
So we got the
got some germs. I hear some yeah.
Yeah, we got the preschool funk going around already. It's like a germ factory in there, man. You know, geez.
I like it. You're pushing through, though, man.
God,
that shows a lot.
No, real quick, my mom was a teacher, and she would always say that she never got sick because she had like super immunity.
Yeah.
Pulled up from being around like the 8th graders all the time. So I always used to think that was like fake, but now I understand. It's very
but she didn't pass that DNA on to you. What's wrong with you, Mom? You gotta get that to KK.
I know it's nature versus nurture. I could have used some of that. You know,
you could use that. Yeah, teachers created that. I don't want to give them a free plug. What is that? Those orange sort of tabs. I buy into that. The vitamin C.
Oh, like the emergency.
Yeah, whatever. The
hell. Take your emergency and your daily vitamins. And your 2-year-old giving you like the plague from Chesterbrook Academy. You'll find a way to survive, you know. So.
All right, here's a football related question, not Eagles related, football related, but it's right up your alley, the kind of stuff you guys put out there on Crossing Broad. I had a call on WIP last night who shamed the announcers, and I tried to explain it to him. It has nothing to do with the announcers, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. But then he shifted his blame to Disney because they were the ones broadcasting it. Shamed them for not showing a replay of Nick Chubb's injury. He said, I should have the chance to see it if I want, and they should give me a heads up if I want to turn away because of the grotesque aspect of the injury, that ESPN made a judgment call, an editorial call, to not show the replay. And I had no problems with it because if you want to see it, they have this great thing called the internet. You can go find it in about 20 seconds. If you need to see it again and again and again and again, because that's your bent, okay, fine. What would be the Crossing Broad stance on that? Should ESPN have showed a replay of the injury of Nick Chubb's leg going in a direction it's not physically meant to go?
Well, you used the term in the question. You said judgment call. That's all these are. I mean, there's no playbook for what a broadcaster is supposed to do in those kinds of situations, you know? I think if you're going to do something like that, you could certainly justify it by saying, hey, we want to give you a warning here. You know, we're going to replay it. And, you know, if you don't want to, if you're squeamish, look away, or, you know, give a disclaimer of sorts, and you can say, hey, this is pretty graphic, you know, if you want to look away, and you can do it that way. But I think they just err on the side of caution, you know, and like try to take the safest route. That's what we did at Channel 3, man. I mean, like, we would just take the safest route and be like, you know, if you think you're gonna upset somebody or offend somebody, don't do it. I think at Crossing Broad, we probably would have showed it, you know, because it's a different brand, it's a different type of approach. But I think
I love the entitlement from Jody's caller. That's
what he said. He said he was being lectured by Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, which I tried to explain to him. Listen, they're not making the call. Someone in a truck somewhere is on the phone with a major Disney executive who's making that call. It's not Joe Buck and Troy Aikman going, I'm dictating that we're not going to show you the play.
Yeah.
The guy came off as
really a comes from way up. I mean, because they have a director who sits in the truck, and the director is the one who brings up the cameras and pushes the button. It's a producer who's sitting behind him who does the editorial judgment call and says, hey, I think we should stay away from doing that. Yeah, there's no right or wrong. There's no playbook for that. I mean, in journalism school, they don't teach you that one way or another. You pay all this money to sit there in class, and then they say, well, it could be this or it could be that, you know? So it's like, everything's an individual. I think if you just give them if you give them the disclaimer, you're fine, though. I mean, I think that's what you have to pair it with.
Now you mentioned you're fighting something, the super bug going through the preschool. Now,
Mhm.
are you fighting through this no style points from the Eagles, Kevin Kinkead, through 2 weeks? I mean, that's tough to take. No
Yeah.
style.
Well, I mean, style points don't mean much after 2 weeks. They mean more at the end of the season, I guess. But again, this is not Penn State, scoring in the final seconds against my guys, to win 38-13 instead of 31-13. I mean, it's more. I think like wins are wins in the NFL. I think style points are much more of a college football kind of thing. I think the biggest takeaway from that game on Thursday night was that the
And
defense.
by the way, they're valuable in college football because you have to impress people.
You
You
have
got to
to,
impress people in the boardroom. You don't
because
have yeah.
there's an
There's no
arbitrary nature to all of the
yeah.
playoff stuff. I mean, like you're fighting, you have to put your resume up against other people's resume.
Yeah.
In the NFL, you get into the playoffs,
Yeah.
Yeah. So the win-loss is the only thing that matters. But my biggest takeaway from the other night was just, the defense gives them a certain thing. So you say, all right, we're going to take it and we're going to run the ball down your throat. And I think people are trying to this week. People are trying to get a grip of trying to parse these two ideas and put them together. Is hey, the passing game doesn't look like it should right now, but also they gave you the running game, so you just force the ball down the middle, and that's just see. I think it's smart because it's like you just take what you're given, man. That's Captain Obvious.
Yeah, I liked it.
That's
I said, I give Brian Johnson a lot of credit. He's like, all right, you're going to play light boxes, inside zone. They never stop it. I'm going to keep running it.
Yeah.
I think it's smart, but a lot of people want that yardage. And I said, look at the other side. Kirk Cousins ends up with 364 and 4 touchdowns, I think, was the final numbers.
Loss.
Yeah, who cares?
But it's funny, John, is like, isn't this a running the football town?
It typically until
okay. So they ran the ball. They ran for 200 some yards.
Yeah.
Now we want them to throw.
Man, they want it all, Kevin.
They do. I mean, and that's important. Yeah, we want a sack on every play, and we want to run the ball down their throat. But I'll give you a statistic that'll help assuage people. Perhaps there are only 4 running backs in the NFL that have at least 15 carries and a YPC number of 6. They are DeAndre Swift, who only got 1 carry in the first game.
Right.
Yeah.
Austin Eckler, Christian McCaffrey, and Bijan Robinson.
Yeah.
That's pretty good company.
And by the way, if you get Boston Scott up to that number, he'd be over that because I think he averaged 8 yards a carry before he got his concussion.
If he was if he could qualify for it. So that's funny, because you talk about the Eagles fans who loved Buddy Ryan and the 46 defense and all that stuff. They are always yelling for Andy Reid to run the ball.
Oh yeah.
Now they're running the ball now, but now we're concerned about the passing game. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that the quote unquote Eagle fan, and again speaking a very broad brush stroke and generality, has come along with the times on offense. In defense, they're still mired in the past. It's got to be all about aggression and blitzing and for some reason the offensive gurus in this town have moved more quickly than defensive one has. You talked about the running game. Are we destined to see DeAndre Swift go down with an injury this week? Because Nick Chubb, ugly leg, bent, done, season over.
Yeah.
Barkley sprain, significant ankle sprain, might be high. They haven't determined yet. Going to miss week. Austin Eckler, time frame to return. Nobody knows anything. All those guys who are fighting to get paid this offseason, they're all hurt already. Is DeAndre Swift, who's going to be a free agent at the end of the season, by the way, is he destined to get hurt this week? Am I now putting the kibosh on his season by mentioning the fact that it's trending to every single running back of consequence going down with an injury?
Well, that's a very gloomy and negative question.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
somebody's got to do it. It might as well be me, not you.
Whoa.
Kinkead, nobody ever complains about you for that. So I'll take the hit on that one. He's going down, and he's going down hard.
If I was Nostradamus, I could give you an answer, but I think if we're playing the numbers game, like surely we've got all our running back injuries out of the way now, right? I mean, can it happen
very
again?
Good.
It can't happen again.
By UKK. I like it.
But doesn't this kind of prove I hate the fact that I'm even saying this, but doesn't this kind of help the idea of not paying running backs? not giving them these big contracts and whatnot. I hate that because these guys deserve to be paid and they put their bodies on the line. But you pay a guy and then he goes down injured. It's like, I don't know, look at all the Saquon stuff. I mean, the Saquon stuff is a perfect case study for paying running backs or not paying running backs, and injury proneness is not a word, or maybe it is, but how injury. Why not? Okay, well, we're just
all the time
making up words on here, but it just I don't know. It's like, I mean, look at like Rashad Penny too. I mean, the only reason he gets in is because the Eagles go down 2 running backs and in 2 weeks. I mean, maybe that's saying like, hey, you should have a committee thing. You should do like the 3-headed monster, the 4-headed monster, if we're considering Jalen Hurts a one head of the Hydra, So fascinating like stuff to help back up these larger discussions we have about whether you should pay running backs and how much value there is in the position.
I'm not going to go down the dark route, Kevin, of Jody projecting injuries. I'm going to talk about injuries that have happened with Avonte Maddox. Now, now Nick Sirianni said, I'm comfortable with in-house options. Well, it just came over when you were talking. Jordan Schultz, give him the credit. The Eagles are looking at William Jackson today, the former first-round pick corner who can play in the slot. Two things. One, how concerned are you with the slot corner position, because they also lost Zach McPherson?
Yeah.
And what's up with Nick Sirianni blatantly just lying left and right, whether it's dust-ups on the sideline? Is he going to corral that a little bit? Or I'm happy with the in-house option. William Jackson shows up tomorrow. Or is Howie just not letting him in? Where's the Kevin Kinkead thought process?
I think Sirianni has reached like year 3 of the NFL where he just doesn't really care anymore. Like he's just going to say whatever he wants to say and just get through the press conferences and show a little bit more anger and emotion. Maybe it's a little bit of the Italian coming out in him. I feel like I can say that because I'm Italian.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But here's an interesting question. Is it do you lose it to say, like, people talking about like put James Bradbury in the slot, right? This hypothetical, right? Do you gain the gain of moving him inside? Is that worth the loss of taking him off the outside?
He's an all-pro outside corner.
Right.
It's absurd to me to even think about it.
So you go next man up. I have PTSD from the Josiah Scott thing last year, and like Avonte Maddox going out at the Cowboys game, which, by the way, I think they would have won if he had stayed on the field. I don't know if that's a hot take, but he was playing really, really well in that.
Yeah, he was playing really well in that game.
And I just, again, you're weighing the risk reward of like, I don't like moving guys out of their best positions just to cover somewhere else. So if you don't like what you have there, sign somebody. I got no problem with that. I mean, that's pretty critical because they haven't named one guy besides Avonte Maddox that the Eagles have had since Patrick Robinson, who's been a good slot defender.
Yeah, it would be Patrick. Patrick had that great season after the worst training camp I've ever seen. It was the weirdest turnaround.
So in the last 6 years, they've had 2 good slot corners.
Yeah. But Avonte's been around. He just gets hurt every year. Right. But when he's out there, very good. Very good slot corner.
Does put them in a precarious position. And I think the reason why Howie will look outside is he's done for the year. And Nick wouldn't say that yesterday, but everyone knows if you have pec surgery, you're done for 6 months. So it's going to take him out for the year. If it was just another couple of weeks or to be determined, he'd be elevating guys from the practice squad, playing the practice squad game of elevating guys X amount of times before you have to release them. I don't know, like Mr. Cepas. We hardly knew ye, and he's gone, and he's done. Johnny Mac brought it up again today, and it's legit. He seemed to have this very good symbiotic relationship with Jake Elliott as his holder. And Elliott has been arguably the best kicker in the NFL, not named the guy from Baltimore. Why am I
Tucker? Justin Tucker.
Just phenomenal all time, maybe the greatest kicker of all time. Jake Elliott, number 2 in the league. We gonna miss Aaron Cepas and his holding ability? Is that what it's come to, Kevin Kinkead?
Oh, God, I've never heard that before. Are there any?
Oh, you gotta listen you gotta listen to John McMullen on Birds
Hey, man.
365 more often.
We got 2 hours every day, Kevin. We got to get down.
You
in the
get deep
weeds with
into
this
the
team. Deep.
Well, I know you love analytics. Do you have any advanced analytics to back up his holding capability?
No, I just covered Blair Walsh. I tell the story all the time, and he was an all-pro kicker as a rookie. All-pro. He was the best kicker in the NFL. And they changed his holder the next year. He was never the same. Never the same. So it's, it's a small sample size.
There's an old saying in sports that works for any sport where if you don't talk about a guy, then that means he's doing a good job. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, when's the last time anybody said anything about Rick Lovato?
Nope. Only time you talk about the long snapper is a bad snap.
Is if they mess
never,
up.
ever even notice them, talk about them, anything.
So so here's the answer. Do they carry 2 punters on the roster?
No
one
shot.
just a hold.
No.
And
Those
one
53-man spots on the Eagles, the roster spots, way too valuable.
Well, and it's not even about the holder, because I've told it. Jake Elliott missed 1 kick in the preseason in Baltimore, 46-yarder. It wasn't easy, but it wasn't difficult for him. Ty Zettner was holding. I looked at that damn thing 10 times, Kevin. It's perfect hold. Perfect hold. You just missed it. Kickers are strange creatures. They get in their heads. You see it all over the league. It's like golfers who lose their swing.
It's mental.
It's a mental thing.
Everybody's got all the physical tools. I mean, let's not act like every kicker now can bang one in from 60 yards. Right? If
it's kind of amazing how
if the conditions are right. Yeah, of course. I thought it was funny too how in New England, like, he misses the extra point. I think it was still rainy in the first half or whatever. That cleared up a little second half. But as he got progressively further and further back, they became easier. So I was like, stop thinking about it and single doinked the one and then hit from 56 or whatever. Does Jake Elliott? Do you think people do you think that Eagles fans realize how good they have it with Jake Elliott?
No, I think they absolutely take him for granted.
Yeah,
he is as good as he is, and it's just like, oh, it's Jake. Of course, he's going to make this 58-yard field goal.
61.
61.
61.
Because we've been blessed with good. I mean, outside of those 2 or 3 years of whatever of Cody Parkey and Alex Henry and Caleb Sturgis. Their bookend. The last 20 years are bookended by Jake Elliott and David Akers. So I mean, Philly fans have seen a lot of crap over the last 20 years, but the kicking has not necessarily been one of those things.
We may get into the weeds on a daily basis here on Birds 365, but that's the first time in a year that Caleb Sturgis's name has been brought up.
There you go. Yeah.
We appreciate you for adding it, for joining us in the weeds, Kevin Kinkead.
It was the Caleb Sturgis injury that got Jake Elliott here. They signed Jake Elliott off the Bengals practice squad. The Bengals actually drafted Jake Elliott, and
he was a draft pick.
Yeah, and he lost out to Randy Bullock. Big mistake by Cincinnati.
See, this is good kicker knowledge out of John. You don't get this kind of kicker knowledge anywhere else.
I'd forgotten Caleb Sturgis existed, that he ever lived. So I'm learning a ton here on Birds 360.
Can I say something? Can I ask you guys a question?
Sure. Yeah, knock yourself out.
It's fascinating to me because I watch. My team's a Big 12 team, but even before we joined the Big 12, when we were playing in the Big East, we ran some version of that, like 3-3-5 like stack, where you had like the hybrid safety linebacker or whatever, and they kind of show different looks. The Vikings rushed 3.
I love Brian Flores. I love the guy.
Yeah, and it was just like, it was funny to me because I'm laughing because I know that Jalen saw a ton of that in his year with Oklahoma, right? Because that's all the Big 12 was. It was like rush 3 and we're going to drop 8 and we're going to try to give you nobody to throw to. But like on those cases, like you really got to watch the all 22, because you got to see like if anybody's open, like what the routes look like. Does he have a safety valve? Is there anybody to dump the ball off to? On first watch of that game, it looked like he did a really poor job with the 3-man rush. And I don't think the offensive line did a great job either. I mean, because they're only sending 3 guys. I mean, 2 guys are going to be double teamed, but the third guy's going to have a one-on-one. And like I felt like those pockets should have held up a little better. Jalen could have at least like skirted to the right or the left, tried to extend the play or stuff. And I thought they could have done better with that. Did you guys notice that when you were watching?
I thought they struggled early because he leads the league. It's only 2 games, but I'm talking about Flores. He leads the league in blitz percentage. So he blitzes more than anybody else. And he's also leads the league in what you're talking about, 3-man rushes with 8-man drops. Same team. It's freaking bizarre. He's a weirdo. Well, I think it works early in games. And same thing happened to them against Tampa. Baker Mayfield was like a mess early. And then by the second half, he's like, all right, I get it. And he goes right down the field, wins the game. But he doesn't have a lot of talent. I love the innovation of the guy. He throws things, but that's why I'm not concerned about Jalen. You're not going to see that. Nobody else is going to roll that out there. It's going to be more conventional, and he's going to settle down. So I'm not too concerned about it because it's such an outlier the way he plays. But he was confused.
I'll tell you what, John, it's a good thing that DeAndre Swift ran for 175 yards, because if he didn't, you would see more of that coming forward. Teams would go, hey, this worked. This is such a copycat league. Even if it goes against their general philosophy, you can stop the Eagles with just a 3-man front and drop a 9. Oh, you'd see a bunch of it. But
yeah, probably
the Eagles had the right answer. We're going to run it down your throats, and they did just that, and they won the football game. So kudos to. All right, so that's the next question, because Marcus gave me a surprising answer on this. He suggested or hinted at that Nick Sirianni was the one who in-game told Brian Johnson, let's run the football down their throat. So he said he spoke to the offensive linemen, and they gave him the side eye afterwards, and they said, yeah, we kind of knew we were going to be running the football as much as they did. Are we going to not give Brian Johnson the credit for making that call to say, hey, we're not moving the football. We know we can run it. Let's just run it. You got a feeling on if there was a main mover and shaker on the Eagles successfully deciding to switch over to the running game? Who made that call?
Well, I mean, without being on the sidelines, I would say that, hypothetically, when you have a new coordinator in there, at least early on, the head coach is probably going to be more involved, right? Before they then detach themselves and say, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. We're comfortable with it. I would think that Sirianni's involvement would be heavier to begin with, and then he would relax it, right? It's like, it's not like Shane, it's not like Shane Steichen where it's like, you got the keys to the car, man. I've seen what you can do. I trust you. Like, maybe there's going to be some training wheels with Brian Johnson to begin with, for sure. So Sirianni's probably paying closer attention to that. Maybe he's got to hold his hand a little bit. What other cliche can I use here? Training wheels, hand holding. But you know what I'm saying? I mean, that would be at least my macro level thought, is that he's probably going to be a little bit more involved. It's like when you hire if we bring in a new employee or something, like my management style is just to like be hands off. Like Kyle Pagan will just go somewhere and do like a video, and then he'll be like, hey, we're going here. Okay, no problem. Because I'm hands off, and like I know that he knows what he's doing, and I trust them or whatever. But if we bring somebody new in, like, yeah, you got to help them along a little bit, and then you back off. So I could see that certainly being the case. Sirianni may be coming in there saying like, all right, hey, this is what they're doing. Let's switch to this. And then they start running the ball and he backs off. So yeah, it's certainly plausible.
I want to use the Sirianni scale. We asked Marcus this as well. So I'll ask you, 2 of 10, he called the Jalen Hurts dust up with AJ Brown. A 2 out of a 10. Mm-hmm. I kind of look at the way they handled it after the game. The locker room didn't open for a while. It was like a loss versus a win. Typically, when you lose, it takes a little bit longer for them to open up the locker room. They haven't lost much recently, but when you win, that thing's open up right away. Everybody's celebrating. Everybody's happy. It was like a loss. And then he claimed at the post-game press conference, I don't know, even though everybody saw him talking to the two, that he had to sort of ease up a little bit.
Well, that's where the PR staff, real quick, but when they prep him for going in there, somebody from the PR staff should pull him aside real quick and say, hey, you were shown on television.
Yeah.
Yelling.
But he should have known. He didn't know that until, I think it was Tim McManus, who said, hey, you're on TV.
Right. Right. So they kind of catch him off guard. And he's like, oh, well, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guess I got to talk about it a little bit. I thought Jalen Hurts handled it tremendously. AJ Brown left the locker room. Typically, AJ's not a guy who doesn't talk to the media. I don't know. I got to feel like it's more than a 2 out of 10. Your thoughts on the dust up?
Well, did we decide whether it was more AJ Brown's frustration with not getting the ball or Jalen's larger level not being able to navigate that drop 8?
Well, we haven't talked to AJ yet.
AJ hasn't talked yet.
But the thought is, and Devontae kind of did the same thing. He was like, at first he said, "What are you talking about?" And then he kind of eased up a little bit and said he's just being competitive. And by the way, that's what I think it is. He's just being competitive. But I think they handled it poorly. So what I point out, Kevin, excuse me, is I think it shows they're a little bit too tightly wound right now. They are cognizant of what's going on outside because all you do, he's a receiver. I talk about it all the time. Receivers want the football. Yeah, we've seen it a million times in every city. Good receivers want the football. It's not that big of a deal, but they sort of made it into a bigger deal.
Well, you come out with your game plan, you adjust your game plan, and you run the ball down their throats because that's what the defense is giving you. But doesn't necessarily mean that's what the offense wanted to do. Or AJ Brown just, what's he going to do? Just stand there, do some blocking, run a bunch of dummy routes while DeAndre Swift runs for 175. You know, just because that's what the defense gives you and what's working doesn't mean that everybody's going to like it. Like, of course he wants to be involved. I think what I would do today, maybe I will do this today. That happened at the end of the third quarter, I guess. Is that when that was filmed? Or when they showed it on the TV?
In mid to late third, if I remember correctly.
Okay, so I'll go back and look at the all 22 from those 5 or 6 plays from that last drive leading up to that, like at the end of the third, and you can look for clues and you can see if you see frustration in the body language or him putting his hand up or Jalen not seeing something in the the 3-man rush or whatever. And because I would be more like, if I had to guess, it would be like, hey, here's what they're showing us defensively. This is where you need to go, and this is where I'm going to be. What are our zone beaters? What's our shallow stuff? Where's our release? What's our safety valve here? I think it's probably a combination of the two things. Yeah, he wants the ball, but like, hey, this is where I'm going to have to get the ball and where you're going to have to go based on what they're showing us, So I think we go back and look at it and see if we can find some clues about, because it's impossible to parse that looking at the condensed game film. Like, you have to have the coach's film of that to see what was there. I was just looking at it the other day, and there was one instance, for example, where they had like 2 guys who were running, like AJ Brown, Devontae Smith were on like the left side or whatever. And they both ran deep, kind of slow developing ish routes. I think one was a go and one was like a deep post or something like that. And by the time they even like got into their breaks, like Jalen was flushed, and he had nowhere to go with it. So it's like you gotta. That's why we need these like pro football focused guys to say, like, how many times did he even have open receivers, or how many times did he even have enough time to get rid of? I mean, were the route concepts even there? Like, does he even have anywhere to go?
I love when people look at if the progression is AJ and then maybe Dallas and Devontae's wide open on the other side of the field. Yeah. How does Jalen Hurts not see that? Well, his progression is on this side.
You can't even get most of the time. You don't get through all your. This is what people don't understand. It's like you don't. Right. I had the pleasure of working with Beasley Reese at Channel 3 for a long time. Yeah. And he was a defensive back, and he would say, sometimes the quarterback can't even get through all their progressions before they got to flee or make a move or whatever, right? I mean, and you're not conditioned to go like, here's read 1, here's read 2, and here's read 3. They're all bunched together. Read 1 and read 2 are right there.
Yep.
And then you may not even get back to the other side of the field. So that's not how it works. That they're all built in so that it's within your peripheral. You know what I mean? It's not, you're not like at a tennis match, like looking at different receivers. I mean, by that time you're flat on your back, but you can look at the route concepts and things like that on the all 22 and say like, hey, does this make sense? Does he have anywhere to go underneath? I mean, some of the times he didn't even have that.
All right, since you are a film devotee, as you've just proved to us,
I wouldn't say that much.
22. Oh yeah, I'm giving you that status because it's going to play into my final question. I can't even call it a hot take. I would say it's a tepid take because I've heard nobody else go down this road that I've gone, and I started before Sunday's games, and I'm certainly going to say it again last night because it showed itself to me on the final play of the Steelers-Browns last night. KK, have you, in the tape that you've been watching, the games that you've been watching, noticing that they're letting the defensive backs play this year? That they're not just throwing a flag for pass interference, shooting the Eagle-Viking game, the one that the D-back just grabbed AJ's arm. It was a blatant pass interference. They didn't call it, and every Eagle fan noticed that. They kind of skipped over the 2 pass interference that Eagle defensive backs had on Viking wide receivers because that didn't go the Eagles' way. But I'm seeing a lot of D-backs getting there, making contact over a guy's back before the ball actually gets there. And not only are the referees not calling it, but the referees in the booth are in on it too, going, oh, no, they're looking at it in real time. So you got to really judge it in real time. No, we don't. You have slow motion instant replay. You go back and show me it, whether it was or wasn't pass interference. I think it's something that's come down from the highest offices at 345 Madison Avenue, that this is a directive from the NFL. We need to let our defensive backs play a little bit. You seeing the same thing I'm seeing, or am I out there on an island by myself?
No, I have noticed a lot of that where I'm saying that could certainly be a flag, and that could certainly be a flag. It's interesting because normally when they have a rule change or they emphasize something or they de-emphasize something, they will announce that and they'll say, "Hey,
they did not."
Nope. Yeah, and they did not. It's like when you're if you're playing a video game or something, they change something quietly without telling you, and then all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, this seems different," you know. But I mean, I think we would all probably, I guess the question, right, is like, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Right.
I would prefer to see fewer. I would always prefer to see fewer flags.
I think it's a good thing, but here's why I disagree with Jody. They're not helping the defense ever. You know, they're not.
Well, right,
I
because
mean, that's not. Yeah,
I
mean, to me, it comes down to me, and at Kevin_Kinkead. Make sure you follow Kevin on Twitter, X, if you prefer.
Yes, follow me on X.
Yes, X. Crossingbroad.com. The grand poopah over there. My thought, bad calls. Hey, I've covering this league for 25 years, Kevin. It's ingrained in my psyche now. I've heard every coach say, control what you can control. That's why I never complain about officials. I don't complain. I'll talk about blown calls. I'll say that's a blown call. That's a blown call. I'll say, you know, they should do this. They should have full-time officials. But I'm not complaining about officials. They're human beings. They're going to blow calls. They blow calls.
I was
sometimes
a ref.
It helps. Sometimes it hurts.
I was a ref. I got yelled at more in those 8 months that I've ever been yelled at in my entire life. You know? So it's like, mostly by the parents too. Next time I come on, I'll tell you the story about how we had to break up a fight in the stands between parents too. It's a good but yeah, I mean, no, back to the point. I just, like I said, it's, I think you make I think you're on the right track there. Cause yes, it's counterintuitive to think that almost every rule change or last X amount of years has benefited the offense, you know, or protected quarterbacks or something like that. The defense does need to be thrown a bone at some point, you know. Maybe Jody's right. Maybe they, you know.
I hope they do it. I hope Jody is right. I hope they throw the defense a bone. I hope they do. But
just like, and I don't know if I said it here. I know I said it somewhere. No one will go on the record and say there was an edict from Major League Baseball this year. Listen, if you can any way, shape, or form call it a base hit, call it a base hit. Don't call it an error. I know what I see with my own 2 eyes. There are errors everywhere, every night, and they're judging them as base hits. But no one will come up with the email, the deep throat email from Major League Baseball going, call hits, call hits, call hits. We all know that it happened. And I'm telling you, that's the case in the National Football League.
You and Anthony Sanfilippo should do a side podcast on that. You guys would get so angry and so
Sanfilippo was the guy who pointed it out to me before anybody else. And I said, God damn it, he's right. I see all these. How can they call him errors? I give Anthony a lot of credit for that. We give you credit when you jump in with us too, KK. You know we love you. We'll get you back.
Get some emergency going there, Kevin.
Yeah, we'll get some vitamins and we'll knock this out of here. All right.
All right, buddy. Good.
Add a little something to that coffee, whatever it needs to be. Kevin Kinkead, Crossing Broad here with some Birds 365. All right, got to come back. Put a bow on the show. Stay right here on Birds 365.